Please continue.
Next slide, sir. Next slide.
Yeah, please continue.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. That was a technical issue. Apologies for that.
Next one, sir.
Yeah. It's moving. So facilitating a logical conclusion and appreciation which can guide and take appropriate actions. The 5 case studies have been selected from various streams. There are positive and negative role models like Delhi Metro. Delhi Metro is for the international audience and students. It's a railway metro in the capital of India. And a negative connotation we have taken is a gas tragedy which has happened in Bhopal. It's a state, it's a city in middle of India, a state called Madhya Pradesh. There was a huge tragedy there in '84. And of course, space shuttle disaster, which we already know, which has happened to NASA. Rare and large-scale event like Fukushima nuclear disaster has been taken as one of the studies. And current and prospective, the 4th industrial revolution, which we all are going forward. And suddenly we have seen this epidemic which has come into picture, a correlation from that point of view. So these are the 5 case studies. First 3 case studies will be taken over and taught by Ramya. And then I will come back for the 2 and we have a conclusion. And then question answer session. Over to Ramya.
Yes. So good morning, all of you. I hope you can hear me now. Check 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we can.
So yeah. So good morning, good evening for the different time zones and all that. So as we start off going ahead with the introduction of what Mr. Vishwanath has given. So as you must have already seen in the online module, we are dealing with 5 case studies to make you understand the application of ethics in real life. So accordingly, the structure of the case studies, which we have discussed in detail in the videos on the Life Skills MOOC website, we will be talking about the synopsis, about the case, what is the case about and what is the background of the case. Then after that, we have referred to some international and national articles and journal articles and research material on the incident and try to see what are the reasons that have been discussed in the post-mortem or the post incident or tragedy stage or a success story stage. And then we have given you conclusions, and most importantly, there are a lot of references after each case study, which we request the readers to go back and see, because there are so many interesting insights that you can learn and probably discuss on the discussion forums. So as we start off with the first case study, the first one is the Delhi Metro case study. The Bhopal gas tragedy. So this is a general disclosure. We are not going to go into the deeper details of it. And so we start off with our first case study, which is the Bhopal gas tragedy. And again, giving the context to the international audience and the learners. So this is a tragedy that struck Bhopal in the early 1980s, where even the New York Times at that point of time covered and says gas leak in India, which has taken away the lives of a lot of people. So you can see the map of India and you have Madhya Pradesh. Bhopal is the capital city of Madhya Pradesh, which is one of the largest states and the central states in India. So what happened on December 2nd and 3rd, intervening nights of 2nd and 3rd, 1984, was there was a Union Carbide pesticide plant, which majorly manufactured, pesticides and fertilizers for increasing the agricultural production in the country, which was an offshoot of the Green Revolution that happened in India at that point of time. So what happened on that night was there was this plant, and as you can see the map here, there are different steps here. So first, there was an MIC, which is a harmful chemical which should not be reacting with water, or large amounts of MIC cannot be contained in plants without safety precautions. But on that night, an accident opening of the tank led to the release of that gas from the tank. And then in the third step, a weak wind helped the gas to convert that, and eventually a lot of it got spread into the remaining parts of Bhopal and the adjacent areas of where the plant is. On your right hand side, you can see an image of the gas spread. Then within 1 hour or so, most of the toxic MIC, which was very harmful for consumption or for breathing or inhalation, got spread itself across the city. And on the step 5, if you see, thousands of people and animals got exposed to the toxic gas. And within a few hours, many people went breathless and many got blinded because of the gas going into their eyes, and few got permanently disabled. Now, if you look at the previous slide, if you look at the previous steps of it, what led to all of it? What led to all of it? The blue boxes that you see, initially what was the background to what happened? A large amount of water with one catalytic material entered the MIC tank. And just to give you a piece of information, MIC is a harmful chemical which should not get into contact with water, even a drop of it. And gradually the reaction took place between MIC and water, and eventually pressure started building up in the tank. So that led to the pressure relief valve just blowing off and the air passing out. So as we see, what happened after this? After the aftermath of it is over 5 lakh people in the whole city of Bhopal, and with Bhopal being the capital city, over 5 lakh people got exposed to the toxic gas. Many people went breathless, and immediate death toll within a few days was about 3,000. And not just people, it was flora, fauna, animals, and including plants which died. And even till date, it happened in 1984, and we are here in 2020. Even now, after effects of that tragedy continue to haunt the city of Bhopal. So when we go, what is the findings and discussion? So the major, when you look at it, first thing is the factory was built in a very densely populated area, which was a strict no-no according to the guidelines. Then there was no alarm of this gas leak at any point. There was no evacuation plan in place. Evacuation plan is where, when the tragedy like this happens, what is the plan B or a plan A to evacuate people, workers, everybody from the factory and the surrounding areas. Then you have other security and technical lapses that happen, and a poorly trained management. Now, when we go on to the next slide and further the findings and discussion, in the next slide, we can see that we are not going into the deeper details. There was lack of security measures, critical technical issues, and downsizing of the Bhopal plant, which is again a management issue. Then lack of appropriate action by Union Carbide. There were previous leaks like this, but there was no action taken then, and there was no future course set. And there were other lack of safety concerns in terms of policies and robust safety standards. So, and also there was, this green chemistry principles which talk about protecting environment, protecting flora, fauna, which were basically ignored. Medical information on the chemicals was withheld. So basically an offshoot of it, when people went to the hospitals, the doctors had no information on what was that they got exposed to, and what was the technical composition or the chemical composition that these people got exposed to, so that they could actually, treat them accordingly. So when we now superimpose this on our case study of ethics and moral responsibility. The previous slide for a second. So there was a critical departure if we look at it in terms of design, ethical and environmental concerns. And what followed next? What happened with the government interventions? A lot of civil and criminal cases happened. Some of these cases are still pending in the courts, and Government of India as the sole representative has taken the case forward. You can go and read details of it. So when we are trying to conclude on Bhopal gas tragedy, what we have actually, based on what we have understood and what we have read and what we have taught, we have understood that there is a need for robust policies. Now, in any ethical standard, like you have seen in the first part of the module, there is a need for ethical standards, professional ethic bodies to ensure that the companies and the individuals adhere. Individuals and institutions equally have the responsibility, moral responsibility to adhere to these guidelines. So in case of Bhopal gas tragedy, robust policies were required for safety of individuals in terms of waste management, environment, and the chemical compositions, green chemistry, and so many other things. And majorly, one underlying factor is the moral responsibility. So moral responsibility, as you can see, is an idea that applies to engineers, groups of engineers, and it's a multifaceted concept which combines obligations, ideals of character, praiseworthiness and blameworthiness, that we have to actually take responsibility as individuals. And there is also a critical need for design and implementation of safer processes. So now when we go ahead, so these are the references on this case study. Of course, we are not going into the deep details. Now, when we shift immediately to case study 2, this is again a negative case study that we have to learn from, an experience we have to learn from. So this is the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster, which happened in United States in 2003. So all of us must have seen, case study, come across the news on Columbia disaster and what happened to the space shuttle. So when we look at it, basically a background is space shuttle. It's a space shuttle, which was the first space-rated orbiter of NASA, an agency of the United States. It was first launched on April 12th, and after that they did 27 missions before it disintegrated and ended in a tragedy in its 28th mission. So mark it, 27 missions it has carried out, and on the 28th mission, it ended up in a tragedy. So when we look at it again, what happened to the, to this Space Shuttle Columbia? Next slide, sir. So Columbia, I'm not going into the details, only, we can see the, picture of all the astronauts who passed away in that aftermath of that space shuttle disintegration. And about the case, so on January 6th, Columbia lifted off for a 16-day mission on a scientific experiment. And just after a few seconds of the launch, a piece of insulating foam broke off. A small piece of insulating foam broke off, which created a hole in the edge. And the third, the details were not known. The foam strikes, but nobody saw that it has a significant damage. And there was a request to examine, which was rejected, thinking that it was just a small thing which could be ignored. But nobody understood the intensity of it or the maximum, damage it could do. Fourth, there was no action taken. On February 5th, when it started its on its way back, when it started entering into the earth, there was a lot of temperature that entered into that small hole, and immediately within a few minutes or a seconds, Columbia went and disintegrated itself, and the entire crew and the spacecraft just didn't come back in the shape that they were supposed to come back. So what happened? All the 7 astronauts were killed, and it was a $4 billion US worth spacecraft destroyed, and more than that, some very talented, astronauts who were killed on the way. And the debris scattered over 2,000 square miles across the city of Texas. And NASA grounded all the shuttle fleet for 2.5 years. Now there was a lot of literature, there was a lot of scientific, postmortems and all that done. And the basic, the major reason was the physical cause of the accident was a breach in the leading wing caused by insulating, foam shed during the launch. So had they, now it is too late for us to also to say all this, but because we are studying ethics, because we are looking at critical eye for details and being ethical, that insulating foam, which actually created a problem, if it was actually addressed in the first instant itself, would have saved a lot of energy, lot of physical, mental, economic, and a lot of other things and resources for US. And then there was a lot of criticism. And although the circulatory, there was also, yes, the next slide. So there was also issues on, circulatory systems function for a brief time. Effects of depressurizing was severe that the crew could not even, gain their consciousness. So there was no time given for the crew also to prepare themselves. And some were not wearing safety gloves and all these safety concerns, which finally, they end up into your individual and your institutional ethics. So had the institution ensured, or had the individual been ethical and adhered to the safety and security standards, there would not be any discussion of this sort. So findings and discussion, no lessons were learned from the Challenger incident. Challenger was an initial incident that happened earlier to this. There were no lessons learned. Lack of eye for details, which we were talking. There was complete ignorance to the form. And there is a lot of imperatives for safety risk assessments that has to be carried out on a regular basis. Now, ethical and other issues, as mentioned below, led to these other occurrences. So there was no interaction, decisions, and normalization of deviance. So whenever something of this sort happens, the communication channels, the management, the level of workers in the entire ecosystem have to be communicated, and nothing should be ignored. So that eye for precision and eye for perfection is an important thing. Then NASA's institutional environment and culture of production was another reason. There was structural secrecy. Both problems had gone for years, and individuals trying to keep bad news from top management is one thing that is a part of a lot of institutions that we see even till today, maybe because of secrecy laws, privacy laws, whatever. But if such incidents happen and such kind of things come out, that is when it would be pointed out as unethical behavior. Then accident of such magnitude and scale tell engineers that each of you need to imbibe into a work culture and adhere to professional code of ethics. Now, as we go further, then Delhi Metro. So this is a positive case study. So Delhi is the capital city of India for the international participants, and the most happening, very populated city. And Delhi Metro is nothing but the MRTS, MRTS, like how it is called in the international scenario. So this is the largest and the busiest metro stations, which is a mass urban transportation system. And this is a successful case study because it's an evidence of how a project of this size, even till date, runs very successfully without very negligible, accident rate or failure rates. And so I'm not going into the details. So as we skip to it, this is just to give you an overview of how big the network is. So just the previous slide. How big the network is. So it started off in 98 with a total length of 65 kilometers and 58 stations to spread across and connect different parts of New Delhi. Then in the phase 2, it started off in 2006 to 11 and covered total length of 124 kilometers. Then eventually third phase, and the fourth stage, which is 17 to 21, is in a planning stage. So approximately it has covered about 300 to 350 kilometers so far in the first 3 phases. And about 109 metro stations have been constructed across the length and breadth of the capital city of New Delhi. And the investment in Indian rupees is about 70,000 crores for the first 3 phases. Now, when we look at the issues versus practices, in like major infrastructural projects, especially relating to urban cities and urban areas, there is a lot, replanning of the city that has to be done, historical structures and institutions and establishments which come on the way. So there was a lot of issues in terms of design and planning, pressures and bureaucratic delays, protecting heritage structures, technical and system hurdles, land acquisitions, environmental issues, and quality issues. And all this, Delhi Metro just zoomed in and, created an answer for every issue that they faced. Of course, all the credit goes to the Delhi management, the Delhi DMRCL, as it is called, the institution which is behind it. So when you look at the bullets in the blue points, it was all about how they have effectively and efficiently addressed all these issues. I will only focus on one point here. The punctuality rate, which continues to be till date about 99%. Of course, the pre-COVID phase, I'm not counting the COVID phase. And the findings and discussions, it was an innovative approach, very popular globally for its success rates. There are Harvard case studies and international organizations conducting case studies on the successful rate of Delhi Metro, its implementation, building, construction, everything. Significant contributions towards controlling pollution. And when we are talking about Delhi's air quality and all that, thanks to Delhi Metro, that it has to some extent mitigated the otherwise very large numbers. Then one of the primary reasons for success is implementation of a code of ethics. Excellent performance in areas such as exemplary leaderships and all that. And then as I conclude, it was the next slide. So the project management skills, protecting heritage buildings, meticulous planning, care in waste disposal of construction materials and clearing. Next slide, sir. And majorly, now the takeaway for us as we are learning about ethics and engineering ethics and professional ethics was they set a code of ethics and values for themselves, where the topmost guy, the MD, to the guy who is on the field constructing it, had the code of ethics and values, and there was strict insurance that there was adherence to all these code of ethics, moral responsibility and all that. And most importantly, because it's about transportation and public service delivery, very committed and conscious public service delivery with a large 99 point some rate of punctuality rate even till date, right from its inception. And it was, and it is considered as one of the major benchmarks of an ethical public institution. So you have references, and we would suggest that you should go and read the case studies on Delhi Metro. And now I hand it over to Mr. Vishwanath for the rest of the 2 case studies on ethics.
Thank you, Ramya. We'll quickly go through 2 more case studies before we really go for the conclusion. This is about the Fukushima nuclear disaster. Synopsis is, as we all know, nuclear energy is considered as the sustainable energy source. On the other hand, nuclear fuel and the waste are highly radioactive, no doubt about that. The world is in a cusp of rethinking on the nuclear energy going forward. The number of accidents are catastrophic as far as the nuclear is concerned. And the Japanese nuclear disaster has raised many ethical issues of the nuclear energy program. And ethical analysis and moral philosophy, what we have learned in level 1 and the theory part in level 2, utilitarianism and deontology systems, which process should be followed. We'll just discuss about that as far as this is concerned. This is just the nuclear power plant just before the accident occurred. I'll not go through the case. There has been on March 11, 2011 at 2:46 hours, nuclear power station was hit by an earthquake and followed by tsunami. What I would like to say here is around 6 workers received radiation doses apparently around 250 millisieverts level set by the Nuclear Industrial Safety Agency. And on March 11th, evacuation orders were issued by government to persons within 3 kilometers, which was followed by people in 20 kilometers, and almost 160,000 people were evacuated from their homes. And final report says around 32 million people are exposed to radiation due to this particular incident. Now, about the case, of course, there has been multiple hydrogen explosions. What has led to that? The findings say that there was a pre-warning, which was ignored. The review of the tsunami countermeasures in accordance with IAEA guidelines were required. And the plant was not to operate without going and addressing these measures. Particularly when the design happened, the backup generators, which finally give the water in the case of failure of power, these backup generators, which drive the fire engines, fire pumps, they were not moved up the hill. When the tsunami water came, the whole generators got flooded and ceiling of the lower part of the building, and that backup power supply has gone. The seawater pumps could not provide water, and the reactor started melting. Now, good practices are not sufficient if applied mechanically. We need to go beyond the strict implementation so that all duties important are carried out. And adherence to the relevant ethical codes and practices is an integral part of any safety culture. We are closely bringing the safety culture and the ethics into here. You can please observe this particular. There's not much difference, but having a code, having an ethical code, having a safety code, and not following it has resulted into such a major catastrophe that it's a lesson to all of us, at the same time to the individuals who are working in whichever profession they are in, and particularly engineers. The overall approach followed in decision making here has lot of holes. If you can see at 5 or 6 areas, the nuclear power plant location itself, they said the decision criteria was very low probability of earthquake, whereas the location selected in spite of project area which was earthquake prone. Why? There has to be a detail behind this. There was something system was not followed, or something the process had given way so that you can bypass and go forward. Similarly, design to be designed to prevent any accidents. Design should be based on reduce the uncertainty and improvement of accuracy. In 2006, a seismic design guidelines were issued. What has to be done, but it was not followed. Being a advanced country like Japan, if this is happening, imagine the other developing countries where we are trying to promote something like nuclear energy. The plant layout, the decision criteria says to avoid loss of any emergency system, whereas the actual condition, what happened, we just discussed, the shifting and relocation of the emergency diesel generating sets. Even the whistleblower who has brought in this particular thing, that was ignored. And during public hearing, the most important ethical thing is to disclose to the locals on all the risks associated with the nuclear power plant. There was low level of transparency and unclear decision-making process. And avoiding conflict of interest was most important, whereas NISA was the Department of Ministry of Economic Industry. METI's job was to push nuclear program. So one prevailed on the other, and finally, we could see what has particularly happened. And this accident provides a lot of inputs to the particular area. If it is medicine, it is between the patient and the individual, whereas a nuclear power plant, the risks are and the benefits are to be much more complex, and they have to be discussed in a very, very large groups before even taking a decision. The two approaches which we have discussed and learned in our theory, utilitarian or risk-based approach, or deontological or right-based approach. Utilitarian says options appropriately evaluating the risks and benefits of the nuclear power plants. And the deontological, it raises the question at every step, are we doing correct or not? Now what happened? The conflict of interest between local residents and national goals were compromised. There was a conflict. Government authorities have to regulate nuclear technologies. Effective measures to restrict the government authority or risk assessment and informal decision making. A low level of transparency was there. And the deontological approach in terms of nuclear power projects, the waste, not just because of today, the justification of the future generations. How are we taking care of nuclear waste? What is happening to the intergenerational ethics issues have to be kept in mind. And the risks for the various sections of the people. Sufficient information in order to choose the energy policy, what is going to happen. If you see the proponents and the opponents, there was very clearly the discussion took place. Accidents are isolated as per the proponents. So please go ahead and establish nuclear power plants. That's what they felt. Whereas the opponents felt that even though there's no greenhouse gas from this thing, but the catastrophic of this, of right from mining, refining and waste is a lot of efforts which need to be put, and all the risks have to be taken into account. In the utilitarian principle, does the nuclear energy program maximize well, being to the most and alternative accomplish the same outcome? No. The city that the troubled nuclear reactors in Fukushima used was the technology of 1970. So there were issues at every stage. There were bypassing the issues. There were ethical issues which was not followed even at the highest government level, just because you have to energize and you have to go forward, and there was conflict of interest at the decision-making level. The conclusions, if you have to bring in to the topic which we are discussing, ethical behaviors and adherence to ethical practices is mandatory. Improved safety standards is no second opinion about that. The cultural belief that problems are not threats. The same thing as Ramya was mentioning happened in the case of the disaster in the Colombia. Culturally, the companies get into a syndrome that what we are doing is correct. Nothing more happens. In so many years, we have been doing the same way. The accident have not occurred, whereas one accident is sufficient to wipe out the population in that area. That is very, very important. The cultural beliefs of the organizations and how individuals have to resist when case the pressures are put on that. Another point made by Ramya was that engineers were made to behave like managers. Engineers are engineers. They need to take into account that issue which they have to resolve. Managers are there to see the deadlines, the budgets, etc. If engineers also behave like managers and they take into account for the future promotions and other things, then this is what is going to that we generally cut short the ethical issues and go forward and result into such major issues and accidents. Enhancing the international cooperation between governments and internal organizations, which was very, very important. And finally, I would like to conclude as far as this is concerned, is a deontological approach appears to be better than an utilitarian approach in for large areas where that the risk can't be mitigated. So better to follow a deontological approach and not get into the other side. So engineering students and practice engineers need to be aware of these things. I'll just run across the final and the very, very important synopsis. The whole world is running now. Of course, we have had a break in the form of coronavirus, but the whole world was running forward for Industrial Revolution number 4, which is nothing but physical, digital, and biological systems. Artificial intelligence, 3D bioprinting, synthetic biology, automotive vehicles, all these areas. Now there is a lot of inputs we need to rethink. I would like to say that the world will be pre-coronavirus world, post-coronavirus world. How much we will be learning from this particular epidemic which we are going through is very, very important to all the students, practicing engineers, and the professionals. Development versus ethics is one thing which has to be in the minds of all of us at the top level. This is already known in the uploading. We have done it. I don't want to go into the introduction, but I would like to say that when the physical, digital, and biological systems are coming together, we need to be much more careful. The transformation of the world in many ways, this particular IR4, changes the way we view our lives, curing and preventing diseases, improving productivity in various domains, improving quality of life, transforming evident automation and robots. Let us now look at the flip side. Mismanagement can happen, rapid spread of misinformation, affect employment opportunities. AI application can have real world impacts. Machine learning have its own issues, and breach and loss of data, people connected digitally, and cloud computing, etc. Finding and discussions. What I would like to say is, all these things may result into weapons of mass destruction. So ethical is so important. Enhance the social divide. Should there be a limit of human intervention that is exceeding its limits, or something that is disturbing the harmony between humans and nature? It's very, very important. We need to rethink the process of technological development. Need for a multi-stakeholder platform, a future-oriented agenda that promotes responsible development, a mechanism which derives. Let each of us think as if we are we have the overall and final outcome has to be kept in mind. If it has a slight risk, please follow your own responsibility, your code of conduct. No deviation, just because there is a thing which we have to finally this one.
Okay.
And conclusion of this particular thing, I'll go for overall conclusion. Not always possible to have mistakes. Flawless organizations are not possible, but unanticipated consequences can be avoided. An in-depth and meticulous study has to be done for every single negative outcome. Need for greater synergy in the vision, mission, and core
Vishwanath,
values.
we need
and compliance with policies
discussion
code of
time.
conduct. Yes.
We
So,
need
keeping
discussion
this
time.
in view, we have attempted to bring this awareness and learners through an ethical and behavior. There can be effective decision making for social good. Social scientists can play a good role. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishwanath. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ramya. And very quickly, I want to take one or two questions because we have only 7 minutes to conclude this meeting. So, any questions from any side? Yeah, Ashish.
Yes, sir. Do we have any case study from the teaching field? Because I'm teacher educator. I'm also looking, I'm keen, before some time back, I attended a human values and professional ethics workshop at IIT Kanpur. Later on, I taught in one of B.Ed college as assistant professor there. Finally, now I'm working as a teacher educator and looking the responsibility of Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, as well as the Tamil Nadu with Bharti Foundation. So I'm keeping all these content with my teacher education field. So do you have any case study of such field?
Yeah.
Sir, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, carry on, Ramya, please do.
Sir, as you must have seen, we have actually taken a lot of case studies from, bigger disasters and all those things. Now that you have asked for teaching case studies, probably we'll get back to you on the discussions forums about it. And we will share resources that we come across on the teaching case studies.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other
Yes,
question?
yes. Sir, Vishwanath sir, can you switch to the first slide?
Yeah.
The title slide.
Yeah, any other question meanwhile?
We have 6 minutes to go, so probably 2 questions that we can take from many of the participants. Of course, we will be there on the discussion forums also.
Yeah, you can raise your questions in discussion forum so that we can get more and more questions.
The title slide.
Teacher education, I just wanted to add here.
Sir, somebody is asking a question. Somebody is asking a question.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, this is Surinder.
Surinder,
Yeah,
please.
good morning to all of you. Yeah, good morning to all of you, sir and madam. Yeah, my question is like, in spite of having all these things, like, is there any prediction on this COVID-19 as of the current scenario? Like something might have happened in China, like we speak, there's some certain kind of questions which are arising.
I would actually be very cautious about touching anything on this COVID-19 because I have actually come across one new word today, infomediac. Infodemic, actually. Infodemic is over information and pumping of more information which will hamper the actual study. So what I felt was that a lot of research and other things are happening. across the world. So in the case of an emergency like this, better allow to take the precautions of each country, what has been told, rather than predicting anything. Your guess will be as much right as my guess in this particular thing. So I would
Yes,
like
sir.
to park that particular point. But at every stage of research, following ethical practices and principles is such an important thing, and many documents have come from the ethical issues during the pandemics and health emergencies, particularly on the research on how do you treat and other things. So that's what I would like to say.
I think
Thank you, sir.
Samuel wants to ask question. Samuel, please. So any other, please want to ask any question, please. Okay, Vishwanath, any concluding remarks?
Yeah, I have already mentioned in the overall conclusions and also in the thing, whichever profession we belong to, whether it is engineering or any other profession, basically there is a difference. Of course, I'm going into fundamentals again, between the morals and ethics. Morals, as I said, was a self-driven. It is like honesty, compassion, helping good people and other things. Whereas ethics is like, behavior in the real world, following codes of conduct and parental rules and following contracts, etc. I would like to put it in the top of your mind that start with morals, which is the fundamental block. There's no second going on the moral part of it. But in the real world, when there are code of conducts, when there is a rules of the game, uh, don't reinvent or try to come out of that from the point of view of some other criteria which is not for your level. If it is an engineer or a junior engineer, of a lecturer or a junior lecturer, there are areas in which you need to follow your own rules and regulations, and I think which have been built, that there's codes of conduct and other things which have been built for your area. I think truly following the fundamentals of morals and following the ethical code of practice of your area itself is 90% achievement. What happened in Colombia, what happened in Fukushima and other things was, these people acted slightly above with the pressures on them. With the pressures on them, that they started behaving, putting the overall, president has been given a date for Colombia, prime minister has given a date for, so all these things has got into the next issues. So I think this is what we can do at our level. We let us do following these
Thank you
things,
very
and that is what I think I would like to say.
Thank you very much, Vishwanath, and thank you very much, Ramaya, for your deliberation, and very nicely we understand about this different case studies and looking towards the ethics and professions. And thank you very much, all the audience. And I request all of you, please raise your any questions, anything you are unable to raise here, and you can raise in your discussion forum, so that all our instructors will be happy to answer you and help you in your learning. And thank you very much. And also I would like to extend my a heartfelt thanks to you are taking care of yourself as well as your community to overcome this COVID-19 and coronavirus, and stay at home and stay safe and help community to stay safe. Thank you very much joining with us. Thank you very much. On Thursday, again, we will join with Dr. Padmaja towards the sixth module, and we will discuss more about it in this time. And again, we will discuss on the various issues. Thank you very much for joining with us. Thank you.
Thanks
Yeah,
so much.
thank you.
Thank you all.